episode of the Match Slip Podcast. My name is Frank. I am your host. If this is your first time listening in, our most recent episode was with OC Geeks and Games out in Oregon City, Oregon. So I recommend checking that out. And once you've listened to that episode, feel free to come back and listen to this one with Josh, owner of Game Goblins out in Little Rock, Arkansas. Josh, how you doing today?
I'm doing great. I actually have two stores now. I didn't know if you saw that or not.
I did. I saw that on your website. I saw that the other one was in Conway.
Yeah, yeah, it's about 30 minutes from the Little Rock store.
Okay, and you started the Little Rock one first. So, how did you get into the business, and how did the business start off in the early days?
So I guess it was around 2009 I started my first company, Plinth Technology. And whenever you're starting a new business, acquiring clients, especially for what I was doing, which was software development, uh, is kind of slow going. So I had a lot of free time when I wasn't trying to market and get new clients or whatnot, especially on the weekends. And I decided I was going to start playing Magic again. And and I had a little bit of a success. I did the I guess it was Pro Tour San Juan. That was 2000 and was it 10 or 11? I think it was 10. Anyway, but yeah, I scrubbed out pretty quick. But I kind of quickly realized that I was a better at buying and selling Magic cards than I was at actually playing the game, and so I still did the tournaments and stuff, but I spent most of my time uh, floor trading, backpack dealer, that sort of thing, and they're about I guess it was about 2011. uh, I had this idea that uh, would it be easier if people could bring the cards to me as opposed to me going out to them to get them. And Little Rock, Arkansas, the capital of is it was in a good spot for me because there were no game stores. The capital city had no game store for like the last 5 years, and I decided, well, I'll open one. And first store was it was in 2012. It was March of that year. I had attended the Game Manufacturers Association's annual expo, uh, did the new store owner track, and learned a bunch of stuff. I go every year now. This year I'm actually speaking at this one. I did the Gamma thing, and then immediately after I got back, I signed a lease. I secured some funding from my bank, and it was April 1st we got the keys, and April 20th we opened. It was kind of it was the fastest I've ever started a business, and uh, but yeah, it worked out pretty well. In fact, it was worked out a little too well. We were only at 2,000 square feet, but we were getting tournaments with at the time because we were only store in Arkansas. We were getting all the PTQs and everything else, and uh, it's kind of hard to squeeze 100 people into a 2,000 square foot space, but we managed. It was just one of those like really, it was a good problem to have. And after our 3-year lease was up, we ended up upgrading from a 2,000 square foot space to a 6,000 square foot space, and that's where we've been, for the last 9 years. And then last year we opened, or I guess it was 2020, end of 2022, we opened Conway.
And is Conway still on the same level as the Little Rock store in terms of like what you host there, or is it more of like for surplus like that you can't fit in the Little Rock store?
Oh no, we carry the exact same products at both locations. The only difference between the two is play space. We've got a bit less place. Like when I thought about Little Rock in 2015, and we were getting upgrading our space. I wanted to be able to host up to 168 players. And the reason for that was the largest Magic event we had ever hosted. We actually had to do that off site. And around this is like as soon as we moved in 2015 and we had the space to host 168 players, that's when Wizards started changing the game up with Pro Tour qualifiers, and they switched from the PTQ system to the PPTQ was what they called them back
That's
then.
right.
Yeah, and that kind of hosed up our plans for those large tournaments. I mean, we still had pretty sizable tournaments, but nothing like we did when uh, we were able to host the you know PTQs, when someone could literally like come into to our store and play in a tournament and leave with a plane ticket and prize money. You know, so on Conway, we opted for a smaller play space for a number of reasons. I mean, we just come off the pandemic. Event attendance has been down, especially for things like Magic the Gathering, and you know the also the rent was a lot higher, so it was space was at a premium. And we've had this philosophy that I know there are some stores out there that charge for play space and stuff, and I think that's great. I've always been I want people in my store all the time. I feel like it's I call it the casino model. It's like if people are in your store, they can spend money there. If they're not in your store, it makes it a little more difficult for them to spend money. So I want to have events and activities and things going on all the time so that people feel like they never want to leave. Unfortunately, I don't have the windows blocked out like a casino or the clocks off the wall, but you get the idea. That's I want to have people in the store. I don't. That's why I don't charge for play space.
I noticed too, you're open every day of the week. I know that's not always the case with game stores based on, Monday coming off the weekend, it's sometimes less frequent that people are going to show up to the store to play a game. But it seems like for you, with this open play space where you're not charging to play, it's actually keeping your store quite populated with people every single day of the week. Is that correct? Or would you say there are slow days also?
Oh, I mean, there are slower days or whatnot, but I pay rent for you know a full month, 31 days in a month or whatnot. I I just have the philosophy that if I'm paying rent for a space, I'm going to utilize it and make sure that we're open. We're receiving product, and we get shipments in every weekday. We get you know, and we don't always have like I mean, like you said, I mean, like, well, in Conway, I think Wednesdays and Thursdays are kind of slow, but like in Little Rock, it's Mondays are one of our slower days. But that also gives us the opportunity to get work done. I have my staff the way I have them. We have like a front of house and back of house staff. Usually during the week we have up to two people in the front and the same amount in the back, and then it's more on the weekends. But even if we're like slow, in terms of customers coming in or whatnot, I can pull someone. Usually, I have people cross trained, so I have someone from the front go work in the back, get caught up on cards, feed the robot, that sort of thing. And then Conway we've been running. It's a newer store, and we're still getting up to speed, with the community and whatnot. So that store, we run a little tighter ship in terms of staffing, but yeah, uh, I don't see any day as like being not worthwhile. I mean, we don't have any days that it's like, well, I could afford to close this day, and I would save more money by closing than what I spend in labor and rent and everything else. Like every uh, every day is at least profitable or break even at the worst. So yeah, we try to be open every day.
And how many employees do you have between the two stores? Because I know you mentioned Conway's a little bit of a lighter operation.
Correct. Yeah. We right now we have 15 employees. We've had as many as 20. Uh, we're actually kind of uh, short staffed right now. We uh, had some people leave after the holidays, and so we're doing our normal hiring and whatnot. I've got to pick up a new front of house person for Conway and one of my back of house. And when I say back of house, what I'm talking like my front of house are the people that hand sell board games, card games, miniatures, and then my back of house are like the people who uh, buy cards, put away cards. We don't actually have them do any sorting because the robot does all of that. We have a Roca. Have you heard of
I
those?
believe one of the other stores I've spoken with, it's a sorter, I'm guessing, for cards.
Hmm. Yes. Yeah, card sorter. It also you know, prices the card. So like it can pick. So like I can, like we'll have people like we have a normal everyday like we pay $3 per thousand, for example, on bulk Magic cards. And some people don't want to spend the time going through our buy list and pulling out the things they want to sell to us individually. And so that's fine. They can, if someone wants to, dump a bunch of cards on us, that's our bulk rate. And then the way that process works is the bulk goes into the robot. The robot pulls out, the nickels, dimes, quarters, anything above that, and then everything else goes into a box and either gets shipped to Amazon or goes to a bulk dealer. Um, as long as we're getting back our $3, you know, we're usually pretty good on as long as the robot's grabbing something out of that stack. So
And you had mentioned earlier that most days with the store, it's break even or you do make a profit. How long did it take to get to that point? Because it sounds like from what I'm hearing is that the operation is running really well. And I know some stores, struggle to get by and, fight to just break even on a given day or, given week for that matter. So I'm curious how long it took you to get to that almost comfortability point with what you're doing with your operation at this time.
well, so we were. It took us about a little over 2 years to get profitability, and then when we moved, that year was a down year, just because of the investment. 2022 was would have been a profitable year, except we opened Conway, and that was a nightmare. I could spend time like just talking about like the perils of opening a game store, but that ended up being kind of a flat year for us. And then 2023 we were a little bit down. I think that was because just 2022 was so amazing. Like the that was the year like I mean there were Pokemon shortages, Magic sales were still great. Everybody was spending money during the pandemic because they, on activities and things that they could do at home. So yeah, we were able to reap the benefit of that. Like 2023 was a little bit of a down year. We were about 5% down from 2022, but given that 2022 was so much better than every other year we've had, I'm not complaining too much.
You had mentioned that there are difficulties opening up a game store, and I know it's probably an elongated conversation, which to me, I'm perfectly fine hearing it. And I actually enjoy hearing the trials and tribulations that are involved in running a business of this nature. So, what are some of the difficulties that you feel are the biggest pain points to overcome?
Well, I can tell you what mine are. I don't know if they're universal, but every time that we have like moved or opened a store, the biggest problem has been getting our fixtures on time. Exacerbated this time for Conway, just because rather than it being like a week late or 10 days late in terms of the delivery, it was more like 7 weeks. And often in leases you have a contractual obligation to open by a specific date. So we had planned on opening in October of 2022 or 2023. I'm sorry. We had to we had all of our marketing geared towards that opening months in advance. And then we had to go back and tell everybody, no, we were wrong. We're not going to be able to open until November because we don't have our fixtures yet. And that was backbreaking. The vendor that we had used made usually made really good product, but this time, but it always seemed like there was always something with them. Like they would forget to send the tools or just like the little screws and grommets and all the little things that you need to assemble the thing. And so it would be an annoyance, but it wouldn't like prevent us from doing what we needed to do or from opening. What this time around they just didn't machine the fixtures correctly. Like the holes weren't where they were supposed to be. So we basically sent us unassemblable product, and we had to. The only way we were able to open on time, and when I say on time, we were able to open by our contractual obligation date, not the time that October 1st, which is when we were planning on opening. We had to get a drill press. We had to figure out. We had to learn how to use a drill press, and we had to fix the fixtures ourselves, or we were going to be able to open. And yeah, that was a nightmare. The biggest things are like the things that aren't really in your control, like like fixtures not being there, cost overruns. There's always something that you're going to forget. That it's like we this time around. I mean, we mapped out everything we could think of that we were going to need for the second store. Um, Down to like mops and paper towels, and had them all itemized, and like this is what our opening cost is going to be. This is when we have to pay for certain things. And even with all of that, it was still more expensive than we thought it was going to be. I think that's just. I'm hoping that for the next store, when we open number 3, I'm really hoping that we've learned our lessons from that and have better fixture vendors, and uh, you know are able to minimize those cost overruns. Um, you know that's the hardest part from my perspective. And then just getting getting the word out, getting people excited about it. This is unlike Little Rock, Conway already had 2 stores in place, so we were kind of jumping into a hornet's nest in that regard. But one of them we weren't expecting. Like one had opened like a month before us, so like that's where that timing and being able to be open uh, when you want to be open, or when you tell everybody you're going to be open, is so important. So I felt like in 2023 we were, or you know, or I'm sorry, 2022 is when we opened. So 2023 was our first like full year in business in Conway. I just felt like we were on our back foot most of the year. That I mean, like to give you, I mean, it's a smaller space, but I'm paying like 1.5 times the rent that I'm uh, paying in Little Rock. But it's also a much better location. I mean, like not, my location in Little Rock's not bad. I mean, I'm like right off of the main drag in Little Rock, in their um, financial district where all the shopping and everything else is. Um, I'm not in the highest end real estate in Little Rock, but I'm just off of it, and it's well traveled. We think we have a little over 40,000 cars that go by our sign every day. Um, in Conway, in contrast, I'm at the Sam's Club shopping center. It's a like like a kind of like an outdoor strip mall in the same general parking lot as the Sam's Club there, and the traffic is huge. Um, but yeah, and we're next to a Crumble Cookie, which had just opened, and that was really popular. We had all kinds of weird bad things. I mean, like there was for the first few months in Conway, there was this group that was, I guess Crumble had invited them, which was against the lease, by the way, to accept donations. It was some like anti-bullying organization or something, but they were super aggressive, and I mean, I don't know about you. I mean, like, I don't mind donating to places, and we do, as a company, donate quite a bit. But I hate being hassled. I hate the bell ringers at Christmas. I hate the people that accost you when you're doing something. You have your mindset on something else, and then there's someone that's like, "Hey, give me money," or like, "No." But they were saying like literally like right outside our door, or pretty close to it. I mean, it wasn't like in front of our store, but it was like right next to the front of our store, and they were going after our customers, and that was a huge turnoff for a lot of people, because people want to shop, they don't want to be accosted by um, people looking. And I get it that that's their shtick, that's how they run their charity, and that's fine, but that's not what I wanted. I ended up having to get the landlord to ask them to go somewhere else or whatnot, because they're not supposed to be under our lease agreement. They're not supposed to be any solicitors outside the stores. Period. Doesn't matter if they're charitable or not. If they wanted them, they could have them in their store. But it's the standing outside and asking for money every day. and multiple times too. Like I would walk into my store and I'm like, you guys know me. I own this place. I've already given you a check, and you're still like hassling me every time I walk in and walk out. Yeah, it was that was annoying. Then there's things that you can't, like I said, you can't control. Like we had a break in the Little Rock store in December. Um, didn't steal anything except for an empty cash register. But oh, these guys were geniuses too. They grabbed the cash register and then tried to open it by throwing it on the stress mat that we have behind the counter. It's like, why don't you throw it on a bed? Maybe that'll knock it open a little faster. I don't know. But uh, yeah, these guys were not very smart, but they did cause a lot of damage. And that of course, it's like, yay, we're doing okay. We're having a good holiday season, and it's like, oh, here's $4,000 that I got to spend, replacing glass and upgrading our security. But we went 11 years without ever having a burglary like that. So I'll take my wins where I get them.
Do you find that owning now a second store compared to the first one, even though you had the issues, even going into the second one, does it help now that things are stabilized, like running the second one to where, you've have your lessons learned and your insights from the Little Rock store, and now you could parlay that into a second store? And I know you said you're looking to do a third one. Do you find that going from one store to two stores to three, does it become any easier in terms of running it, or does it just create more responsibility for you? It's just like a different level of almost like expanding a business, I guess you could say.
Yeah, I think that there's definitely like there's a leap going from like never owning a store or never running a business to opening a store for the first time. I know a lot of I have mentor store owners that are like first getting in, and my normal advice is the same advice that I got when I started, which was don't do it. And then if I'm able to dissuade you from doing it by telling you not to do it, then you don't need to be in this business in the first place. But if after my warning you're still, 100% I'm going to do this or whatnot, then I've got some things I can impart or whatnot. But uh, going from my perspective, like I'm a computer engineer. That's my background. Bachelor's of computer engineering, and then I got an MBA. But I'd never worked in retail. I never ran a retail store. So everything was, I knew at the beginning I was going to be paying for lessons, basically, like by making mistakes, and that's how I was going to be paying for those lessons. And then once I got comfortable, we moved into the bigger space, changed our point of sale system, had access to a lot more reporting, and that was a big sea change. And then uh, by the time we opened store number two, we had a warehouse in Little Rock and our primary store, and we were working on getting our online presence set up. And so figuring out like like for example, like one big thing is like how do you keep both stores well stocked, especially if you have like a warehouse where you're trying to, you know, I'm trying to, when I order things, I'm trying to get, deals on bulk purchases. Like a lot of companies, will give you like a 1 to 5% discount depending on when you how much of a product that you're purchasing, and when you pre-order and that sort of thing, and if you're doing it in case quantities or pallet quantities. And so that's one way that we try to improve our margins a little bit. And but then there's the overhead of like, okay, now that I've got, like when I order sleeves from Asmodee, I just place an order for like a case of the red sleeves, the red prime matte sleeves. I get an extra 1% discount if I order them by the case. So what I'll normally do is I'll order that case, and it'll go into our warehouse, and then I have inventory people that their job is to, allocate a certain amount of that product to both of the stores, and then we have runners that go twice a week between the stores to um, either rebalance, like sometimes like Conway will have too much of something, it's just not selling well or whatnot. We'll claw some of that back and we'll move in Little Rock. Or sometimes we'll order bulk of something and then we'll ship a portion of that out to Conway ourselves. Um, and getting that process figured out, I think, was the hardest part. And also like getting our staffing arranged. Like now I have like a full time, we call them team leaders in Conway, and he's salary, and he basically runs the day to day over there. And then I've got a newly minted. He's been with me for almost as long as I've been open with the store. But Jeremy, he's now uh, my chief operations officer, and his job is to make sure that everything's running smoothly. We've got a we had a person that was in charge of like marketing and stuff. These are all like tasks that we kind of just shared among ourselves. But now we're like, I find that as we've added more stores, we're starting to um, isolate roles a little more, where like social media is a full-time job, operations is a full-time job, inventory is a full-time job. Whereas before it was like, in some stores, like your all of your workers pretty much do all of everything. Like they're either checking in items or buying cards or working the cash register. And we have kind of a bit of a demarcation of responsibilities as the company's grown.
What is your primary responsibility these days? I know you mentioned ordering. I was curious if it goes beyond that.
So I'm, like I look at my job as more of the 10,000 foot view. I'm trying to decide, like what's the direction of the company going forward? What type of new product lines do we want to get into? What ideas for new events, that sort of thing, and then I give it to my staff to kind of implement at that point. Uh, uh, but in terms of day-to-day work, it's primarily ordering. I we have a company Slack that we use to facilitate communication, and one of our channels is just called Ask Management, and that's where people can chime in and ask questions. If they don't have something, they have a question that's not covered by like our SOP or standard operating procedures, then they can jump on that channel and ask one of us, and we'll give them an answer. That's taken a lot of load off of me, from because like my staff would, I'd get messages any time of day or night, asking something, and I'm like, I pay people to answer these questions, and yet they ask me, like, so, and that's the thing, I don't mind it. I like, having that direct communication with my staff, but Game Goblins is not my only company that I run, so I split time between Game Goblins and my other companies, and so I really need them to be picking that up from the rest of my staff that you know are there, and I pay them to do that type of thing. But uh, I I look at ordering as like, so product is the biggest expense a company has in in owning a game store. I mean, it's probably true for retail in general. It's usually between 50 and 60% of a company's revenue is going towards replacing product that is purchased, right? Or bringing in new product that's to be purchased. And for uh, uh, for me, that's always been one of those responsibilities that it's like I have a lot of trust issues when it comes to that large amount of. I mean, like, it's like you give that to somebody else and they under order a magic set or over order a magic set, and that can sink you. I mean, like literally sink you. Like someone put it's like, well, I meant to put in 120 boxes for this set for Conway, but I actually put in 1,200, and now the distributor's saying we have to take them all. Like that's the kind of thing that can ruin a company. So I've been reluctant to hand that responsibility off. Over time, I've given more buying responsibility to my operations manager. He handles a lot of our like direct from publisher type purchases, and I handle the what we call the big five, the five biggest distributors for uh, hobby gaming retail. Your Alliance, PhD, GTS, Southern Hobby, and ACD. And so one thing I'm doing now is I'm training a buyer, and that's been that's been good. I mean, I have someone really smart we're working with on that, and I just I think they're talking with them. They're super excited about the opportunity, but I didn't hire them as a buyer, and it's one of those jobs that it's like I try to explain to them. It's like this is not it's not the equivalent of like going to medical school, but it's also not something that you can you know watch a 4-hour video and you know everything you need to know. This is something that ordering for a game store, especially one that like I mean our stores, between our stores and our website and our TCG player, we're pulling in a little over 3 million a year in revenue. There's a lot of room for mistakes, big mistakes to happen. Uh, the bigger we get, so it's not, yeah, it's not nothing you can learn in 4 hours, nothing you can learn reading a book necessarily, and it's not something that it's also not the equivalent of like going to medical school. I think of it more as like getting your pilot's license or something like that. I mean, I was trying to explain to her that we're gonna be working on this for the next year, um, and so I'm slowly like handing off things because they're all different. Every vendor's different. Every ordering process is different. Um, it's a that part of the industry is a little chaotic. It's when I look at some other industries that have ordering a lot more streamlined than I think the hobby gaming or the friend local game store has. It's a little daunting the amount of institutional knowledge you need in order to be successful in ordering. I mean, like I look at it right now, like what I judge my success at that based on like how much I have to clearance at the end of the year. Like um, if you're a store and you're clearancing 25% of your inventory because it's not meeting your annual turns, uh, you're not doing that well. Like I'm at 5% and I keep wanting to get it smaller. uh, I think right now I've got like 30,000 in product that I wish I didn't have. That I'm like, if a meteor hit this product, I would be so grateful. Like as long as it didn't injure anybody. Um, Part of my, like I look at it, it's like I'm constantly trying to get better at ordering, but it's so much, part of it's science and part of it's art, and it's just something you learn and figure out or you fail. And you're gonna make mistakes. You just have to count on that at the beginning.
Is there anything that you guys use for tracking ordering? Like, so when you're deciding to bring on a new product line or ordering a certain amount from an existing product line, like you mentioned, there is a science to it. I'm curious if you're doing anything internal processes to determine, so you're not, say, over ordering or under ordering, going back to what you said a little bit earlier, so that you're not, losing money and instead, making sure you break even or make a profit.
So and it depends on the product line, but like for board games, my philosophy is that if I'm gonna bring in a game, I'm gonna bring in at least a case of that game, and I'm per store. And if I don't, if I'm not, if when I research that game, if I don't feel like I can move like an average of 6 copies in a year of that game, I don't want it. Some of it's research, some of it is like looking at playing the game, and uh, I have a really great point of sale system. We're using a company called Lightspeed, and we're able to pull. Not only are we able to get reports through the software on like our turn rates and everything else, but um, the the software is really friendly in terms of like being able to extract raw data out of it. And then with my background in software development, my operations manager also has one in software development. We have created a whole lot of utilities that we use to evaluate everything from like card prices to how much stock we should be carrying. And uh, we refine that constantly. Like we look at our 30-day, 90-day, and 360-day turn rates on games. We look at how many of a particular, like we can look at like for board games, I can break it down based on like a price range, right? I have like which games sell more, like the the games sub $20, the $20 to $40, the 40 to 60, or the 60 to 100. Like, and we can create those categories and kind of see what the trend line is, or like themes is another example. Like, um, though this dungeon crawler looks really cool. How many dungeon crawlers do we have in stock? Okay, well, do I need another one? Does this like fit a role that these other games didn't? Um, that kind of thing. So we're a very data driven organization on that regard. But sometimes even with that, you'll pick a game and it just won't work. Just doesn't. Your audience just doesn't like it. We use some pre-orders to help judge how much of new things to carry. Um, but yeah, that's a lot of it's like using the existing data we have, refining it, and then just having a feeling based on the trends with the customers and talking with the customers and seeing what kind of product they're wanting to carry or wanting us to carry.
And what is most popular amongst the customers at your store in terms of the games they play, the events that they attend?
So for wargaming, it's Warhammer 40K uh, by a mile. I mean, like the new Old World game, the basically a throwback to the, I guess it was eighth edition. Was it seventh or eighth edition Warhammer Fantasy? But like with the movement trays and everything else, like that came out, and that's been the latest hyped thing at my shop. But 40K is one of those, like 40K is always popular. It's I've got an active league that in Little Rock, we end up with, depending on the time, depending on the season or like the time of year, we usually have between 16 and 40 people in our league for just 40K. Card games, Magic's still number one for us, but I tell you, like the last few years that especially during the pandemic and post arena, the game is definitely not what it was when you know I think it was at its high point, which was the I think from 2009 to 2012, maybe even 2014. Magic was still a really solid game, and one that like attracted new players and attracted the grinders, attracted the people that wanted to live the dream. You know, and Wizards has just shot themselves in the foot quite a bit. I mean, nowadays, like firing a standard tournament is it just doesn't happen. Not in my area, at least. And I've got 14 other stores in a 50-mile radius now, and no one's running standard, not to any degree. Commander is the flavor of the day, and I think that's a pretty accurate trend line in most places. I think there's still quite a few people that play modern or whatnot, but you know, we went from running the largest tournaments in Arkansas and hosting Pro Tour qualifiers to, you know, I, I'm like most of the other stores in my area. Like, there's very few stores that are even like doing RCQs. It's just not worth it. People aren't attending them. This new one that hit is for standard, and no one is excited about playing standard in my area. Um, I did pick up a group of legacy players recently, which was nice. Um, Trying to get a event going for them, and I've got some guys that want to play Pauper, but that's one of those ones that like that's a cyclical one. I'll get people that want to play Pauper. They'll do it for uh, a few months to a year maybe, and then we'll have a lull where they moved on to something else. And then some people are like, why don't you guys have Pauper? It's like, well, we did, but then it kind of died out, and then board games, that's all over the place. I think the really crunchy Euro worker placement, Martin Wallace style games or whatnot are probably the least popular. And then I compare that to like our biggest sellers are like Root and Everdell, and Frosthaven's been pretty good, given the cost of that game. But yeah, I mean, we just sell all types with that. But yeah, and then we've been getting into like toys. We've started carrying Gundam, and that's been going pretty well.
We're going to take a quick break from this podcast to talk about our sponsor, Cardboard Shuffle. Cardboard Shuffle was our 10th podcast interview here at the Match Slip with store owner Mark. Mark has expanded his brand and has produced his own card sleeves called Shuffle Shields. Shuffle Shields come in packs of 100 premium matte card sleeves for standard size trading cards. They contain no PVC and are acid free. I have 17 packs of Shuffle Shields card sleeves to give away to listeners of the podcast and followers of the Match Slip on social media. Requests for a free pack of card sleeves shipped for free to you will be processed on a first-come, first-served basis. To receive your free pack of Shuffle Shields, you'll need to send a screenshot that you're following Cardboard Shuffle on Facebook to frank@thematchslip.com. Good luck, and back to the episode. Is your store a WPN premium store for the Little Rock one?
Actually, they're both Little Rock. Yeah, that was probably the fastest we've. I don't. Well, I may be wrong on this, but I don't think any store has gotten premium certified as fast as we did in Conway, because it was literally like within a month after opening that we were approved for premium. But we built the store with premium in mind, whereas Little Rock store we had to do some upgrades. It wasn't a whole lot. I know a lot of stores that spend a lot of money like getting their stores up to speed for the premium requirements. I mean, like if you were like, I've got lifetime tables and fold up chairs or whatnot, and my floor is old concrete that probably needs a good, you know, resurfacing or whatnot, you're not going to be premium until you get those things fixed. Whereas, like for us, it was like the biggest complaints were like trash cans. They wanted a specific type of trash can, which I was like, all right, well, I mean, if you want metal trash cans that have like flip lids or whatnot, we can accommodate that. We'll go buy some. But that was, I mean, they're or if like you had a store that like the bathrooms are disgusting, they're not going to approve you premium. You gotta. For us, I think we only spent about $5,000 on Little Rock to get it to where we needed it for premium qualification, and then Conway, of course, we built it with the idea that we were going to be applying for premium, so it was it was a quick process, and they seemed really excited about the idea of getting a second premium location in Arkansas because we're the only ones that are premium.
And especially like how quickly you were able to get it to be put through, because normally you don't hear it being that fast of a process, at least from my experience of the game stores I've talked to. So I think that's great that you were able to get that put through that quickly for the two of them, and it didn't cost you as much as I would have expected.
Yeah, no, well, with Conway, like we already knew the requirements, so we just we made sure that everything we had was geared towards that, and I mean, it's not it's not hard to um, build a store with premium in mind. I think there's going to actually be a third store in Arkansas here soon, because I saw up in Northwest Arkansas this store a friend of mine on Facebook opened called Final Boss Games. It looks gorgeous. I think they're gonna. I was like, if they don't apply for premium, then they just don't care about applying for premium. They don't they care about the moniker, but they would certainly qualify for it. Their store is just it's beautiful. It's the I mean, like I think I like my stores, of course, but I can respect other people's stores too, and their aesthetic, and yeah, I think they have a gorgeous store, and I think they should do really well up there. Northwest Arkansas is that's where like the University of Arkansas Fayetteville and the Razorbacks, and they have kind of a metro up there. It's not quite as big as Little Rock's metro, but it's relatively decent. I would compare it to like Dallas and Austin maybe, or something like that. Like except much smaller. But in terms of like the difference between the two sizes.
I see. That makes sense. So I know you had mentioned earlier that you had played Magic and you had played competitively. Was that your inkling into having a game store, or did it originate in a different manner from your experience with already having another business, as you mentioned?
So when I had no plans of getting into retail when I started playing Magic, but um, what I did have was, I had was married to my first wife at the time, and uh, she was in let's see, 2009. She was probably just fresh out of law school. So I mean, like we had two incomes, but hers wasn't. I mean, a junior lawyer isn't making a lot of money when they start out. Um, so uh, if I wanted to do all this traveling, which is, like jumping on planes and going to like Grand Prix, Star City Games tournaments, that sort of thing, that has an expense associated with it. So the way that I kind of offset those expenses was by buying and selling Magic cards. Like I had some extra income, and I had, you know, like I said, there was no store in Little Rock at the time, so I kind of got known as the guy that had stuff. Um, and I would go to events and I would pick up cards, and then I would bring them back to Arkansas and sell them. And then I would buy their cards and take them to events and sell those. And I ended up, that was where not only did it pay for my traveling and my playing in the tournaments and everything else, but um, it also, you know, fed my bank account and allowed me to build up a little bit of a nest egg. And eventually you know, I was like, man, I should probably turn this into a business, because it'd be a lot easier if I didn't have to, like, drive to random people's houses and like, or go to all these events. If they would just bring me the cards, it'd be amazing. And that's what we did. We were only stored in Little Rock, and then if you went to any of the stores around the area, they were still back then. It was like the norm was, if you went into a game store and you sold them cards, assuming they weren't bulk, uh, they would probably give you like 50% of the value in credit or 25% in cash. And so um, I took the lessons that I had learned from buying and selling from dealers at these shows and kept, similar rates to that, and built up a pretty nice clientele. Like, I mean, like when we had our first Magic event, we had nearly a full house. I mean, I think we had 40 for our first draft, and then we had kind of I think was that Avison? I think it was around the time we opened, or maybe it was Innistrad. I have to go look at the calendar, but people already knew us when we opened, so that worked out really well. Um, and we already had like a huge inventory of cards that we were able to put out for people. And yeah, I mean, that was kind of the impetus for it, was just covering my travel, covering my personal cards, which ended up, like, I had a personal collection. I had some ridiculous stuff at the time. I mean, like I had like I played Commander like most people, and I had a foil Japanese Azami Lady of Scrolls deck that I built, and it was just ridiculous. Like the I mean, just stupid cards in this thing in terms of, and I just, shuffle it and play or whatnot. I just thought it was more of a, it was definitely like, if it was a pissing contest, I was winning. That was what I was trying to go for. When you own a store, one of the rules you learn pretty quickly is don't get high on your own supply. And for me, that went, you know, I didn't have a personal collection anymore. Anything that I had was available to purchase, and then eventually I didn't carry, I didn't carry around my own cards. I just, everything went to the store. And like today, I don't have a commander deck. If I want to sit down and play Commander, I'll go buy one off the shelf or something like that and sit down and play. But I'm not. I just don't have, like. I don't like the idea of tying up my inventory because it's something that I want, and I think that's the first thing you got to do as a. Because I used to back a lot of Kickstarters for board games. I used to, you know, I had 40K armies. I was a gamer. Like I loved, and I still love everything that I sell. But once you have a business and then two businesses and then wife, kids, that sort of thing, your your focus is more on running the business and less on, like having the cool stuff that you can sit down at a table and people go, ooh, shiny, like that kind of thing. So yeah, maybe that's like growing up to maturity, that sort of thing. But yeah, I don't have a personal collection anymore. I didn't. That was very early. I realized that in my game store ownership career. So
No, it's completely understandable. I've heard other store owners say the same thing. You have to wind up using your own cards that you've accumulated as the basis for basically starting a store. So it makes complete sense what you shared there. I was wondering in regards to the events when they're held at the store. I did see that on your website that you guys do also sell beer too, which I thought was really cool.
Mhm.
And I was curious, how does that play into the profit margin? Are you able to, offset, the little money that comes from, people entering in a tournament, and then you're able to offset that with the beer sales and like whatever else you may sell as a side thing, like whether it's snacks, soda, that kind of thing.
I actually love this question because I hear it a lot from people in the community. They're like, oh, well, if I opened a store, I would run all of my events at break even and then make it up in concessions. One day I put out a poll I was like, hey, I'm going to give away a $50 gift card. If whoever gets the closest to the number wins the gift card. It's like, what percentage of my revenue do you think comes from concessions? And I got all kinds of wild numbers. Like someone said, I think I had them as high as like 20% was like some of the guesses or whatnot. For me, and I found this is true for like most mature stores, concessions only make about 1.9% of our revenue. And so in terms of profitability, I mean, like now granted, that 1.9% is very profitable, just that 1.9% because our markup is so high on concessions. But it's such a tiny part of our revenue. I mean, like, for a $3 million company, I mean, that's uh, 1.9%. What is that? Less than $60,000. That doesn't even pay my operations manager's salary. So it's and that's the thing. Like, I've always been big on the idea of like from the day I opened, uh, my philosophy has always been I pay my employees a living wage, and that has increased dramatically, especially over the last couple of years. But we've kept that philosophy. Like if you go on the MIT Living Wage Calculator, and look at Arkansas and Pulaski County, it'll tell you that for a single person with no kids, the base rate of pay they need to be able to live without being poor in the poverty line is $16 an hour. And so uh, that's our um, that's our starting basis. It's actually about $5 more an hour than our our required minimum wage in Arkansas. Uh, but yeah, the little tangent there. But I'm big on the idea of like paying my people well, and that's worked out for us. We've been fortunate enough to be able to afford that. But the um, but like concessions, yeah, concessions are a joke in terms of like how much they put on the table for us in terms of money. I'm happy to have them. I could probably do things to improve our product selection. Like there's a store that opened not too far from us, but their focus is most on anime. And they do a lot of like, Japanese snacks and whatnot. And I bet they do pretty well with that. But I'd also bet that even with what all the other stuff that they're selling, like I couldn't see it be more than like 4 or 5% of their revenue. And I'm just guessing based on my knowledge of how much concessions actually end up putting in the bank or whatnot. But yeah, beer sales are tiny compared to like I mean like I sell more water than beer. I sell more Coca-Cola than beer. Uh, Mountain Dew than beer. But it's one of those nice to haves. It's like if someone wants to come and uh, play a game of Warhammer and have a few beers, they can. Like that was the idea behind it. Right now, we just do canned and bottled beer. Um, at some point, I would like to do a tap, or a tap system or whatnot. But the thing we found was that tap system, as soon as we put that in, that gets us into like the whole health department regulations and having to get certified for safe serve and some other stuff, and it's an entirely different wheelhouse than I have no experience in restaurants, so or and that type of stuff. So for us to do that, we're going to be investing time and lessons, like learning how to make that work. But I mean, like it's we sell enough of it to keep it going, but not enough to where it's going to pay anybody's wages or keep the doors open and lights on. It's such a tiny amount of what we actually sell. So if you ever hear any store owner or any would-be store owners like talk about, like, oh well, yeah, they'll just make it up in concessions or whatnot, run the events at break even. They have just told you something that, because I had the same opinion when before I was a store owner. I thought like that's just the way the world worked. Is like you try to run your events break even and then they make it up in concessions. That's not how things work.
That's fascinating. Something I never would have expected, but very interesting to hear that it really isn't much of a boon at all to the business. It's really just a nice supplement almost. What would you say is something that's unique about your store that whether you visited other stores in Arkansas or in other states, and then you look at yours and you notice you have a unique aspect to it. What's something that you consider unique about it?
So, initially, I thought my unique value proposition was that I wasn't a clubhouse. Like I went to stores and to do research before I opened, and I went all over the region, checking out stores and big stores, little stores, new stores, old stores, just kind of get an idea of like what made a game store tick and what separated successful game stores from ones that were either close to failing or had failed, and what kind of I talked to store owners that had that were former store I mean or store owners that were former store owners, and they uh, asked them questions about like what didn't work, like what didn't work out for you, like what were some of the things that I need to look out for when I'm running a store. And a lot of the stores back then still had the same kind of vibe that I remember as a kid, walking into stores. They were cramped, poorly lit, and they smelled bad. I mean, like, and I think and so my store was going to be open, spacious, well lit, and was going to smell like flowers. Like I didn't want that, you know, gamer stigma. You see like people that aren't uh, regulars at hobby gaming stores like associated with gaming stores, like we're this dungeon that nerds go to buy games and not speak to the opposite sex or whatnot. That's the opposite of what I wanted. Like I wanted a place that you could bring your family to and be comfortable, and not I wanted a place that you know uh, uh, was friendly. You walk in and it's not the guy for the comic book guy from The Simpsons or whatnot running the counter or whatnot. So we're big on like customer service training, and you know and that worked out too, because that's one of the things that going back to your earlier question with like premium stuff, like that's one of the things Wizards does is they do a secret shop, and they have a whole bullet point list of like things they're looking for in terms of customer service, in terms of atmosphere, in terms of and so training is a big part of that, making sure that you have friendly people that are basically the way I look at it is like we're gaming sommeliers. Our job is to we have customers that come in that want to uh, buy things, but they may not know exactly what they want to buy. And so our job is to steer them towards not only the products we want to sell, but the products that are in line with like if they come in and they're like, yeah, I'm married, I don't have any kids. What kind of two-player games do you have? Well, my staff needs to know what kind of games to rattle off based on that type of feedback, and we practice that. So like I think for us, it's if I had one thing to uh, put us as a unique value proposition today, because I think that all those requirements in terms of like being an open, inviting, friendly place that is run professionally, all of that is a given these days. It's not unique anymore. It's something that you pretty much need to do, or you're not going to be successful. But for us, it's just the fact that, I mean, we have so much product. I would put our inventory up against, any store in the state in terms of like uh, selection of 40K products, Magic, Pokemon, that sort of thing. It's I think that if you come into Game Goblins, what you'll find is that we have a very organized, very well run store, um, and we have friendly people that actually know the games, and they're not the type that's going to. This is one of the big things we harp on with our staff is that if you get your kicks off of yucking someone else's yum, we don't want you as an employee. I mean, like, if someone comes in and they're like, I just really want to play Age of Sigmar, and you don't like that game, I don't care. Like I don't. I mean, like you need to be excited about someone else being excited about our hobby. You know what I'm saying? Like, and then help them find the things that they want. Uh, but if you're the type of person that's like critical of every, it's like I'm gonna critique, the things that you enjoy, or critique your deck choices, or like that kind of stuff. That's not the kind of environment that I want to have. And I've been in stores where, like, you pick out a game, it's like, what do you think of this game? It's like, oh, it's awful. Like, or it's like, well, you know, if it's awful, why are you selling it? Why is it in your store? That kind of thing. But I see that kind of stuff. I think it's the combination of the environment, the community we've built, um, the staff that we have, and we're very picky. I mean, like we just put out an ad for Conway. I've got like 80 apps I'm going through right now, and we're going to you know we're going to pick one out of that. Um, it's funny because like we get a lot of one thing I'm looking at in my process is like I need a way to like let people know that hey, we appreciate your invitation or your application, but you know uh, we're going with a different candidate or something like that. I'm looking at some automation tools for that, um but yeah, I mean, like we're picky about the things we carry. We're picky about the people that we bring in, but I've found that tends to lend to having you know better product, better staff. And I don't think I think that you know that's one of those are the big things that separate us from other stores, is that we're mindful of that constantly. And it's not just smaller stores can't afford to do that in a lot of ways. Like they can either be really passionate, which is, I mean, passion's a great thing to have, but they're not going to have the data, they're not going to have the experience, they're not going to have the institutional knowledge that we've developed, and the training that we've developed, and the software we've developed. It's just a different you know different kind of company, in my view.
And even just looking at your Facebook page and seeing the cover photo there of how well the store is organized, could you give people a little picture of how the store is laid out?
Little Rock and Conway are very similar. We have some like islands in the middle of the store. We have gondolas in Conway that will eventually convert into islands, but these are demo tables that also serve as gondolas. So one of my big one of my big things is like I want customers to be able to play games before they purchase them. I think that if I'm gonna buy something, a lot of times like the box isn't enough. Like I actually want to see the game played. I want to I want a 3 minute elevator speech on why this game is something I should spend my time and money on, especially nowadays with inflation being so high. And so I have a minimum of 20 games on the floor at all times, ready to demo. And then my staff have card games behind the counter, so they can do like just recently we got in Star Wars Unlimited, new card game. Before the pre-release for it is not this weekend, but next weekend. But we got some early copies of the starter decks, and I was like, learn these and then be ready to show people the game, especially if they're like curious about it or want to ask questions about the pre-release. Play a demo with them, and then sell them on attending one of the 2 pre-release events. Uh, and so the way the store is laid out is that we have all these like demo stations throughout the store that people can either like among themselves or with the help of my staff, they can learn a game in quick manner, get a feel for how it plays or whatnot. And I train my staff, if you're gonna demo a game all the way from start to finish, make sure you lose. the it's a sales tactic. I mean, it's like if someone has a good experience playing the game and they're playing it somebody that does this demo all the time, and suddenly they win that demo or whatnot, they feel great and they feel like spending money. Like it's I teach them demo to lose. There was a book. It's called The Science of Selling. I read it a while back, and it was a game changer for me in terms of like getting into the psychology of like why we buy is the name of the book. And a lot of gems in that book in terms of like learning how to present your store and how to present your product in a way that invites customers to want to spend money. Um, and then we have these big book wall shelves like surrounding the store on the perimeter of it, and we stock most of our board games up there and a lot of our miniatures and such. And then we have towards the back a our checkout station. And one thing I'm working on with my staff right now is a lot of especially newer employees love to stand behind the counter all the time. And I try to tell them like this is not Helm's Deep. You're not protecting yourself from orcs here. Like you have to come out from behind the counter in order to interact with customers. They don't want. I mean, like you know, some customers don't want. And that's the other thing. That's my other thing is that my staff is trained not to ask questions that can be answered with a no. Now you might be thinking that like that sounds like an aggressive selling tactic. Is I'm big on don't be pushy with because I want people to feel like they're welcome and they're not getting just hammered with solicitations to buy things or whatnot. But at the same time, like I mean, think about it. When you walk in a store, like if I'm an associate, I come to you and it's like, hey, can I help you find anything? What's your default response? Yeah, just looking. Yeah, like that it's a it's a easily dismissed question because a lot of times people don't want to interact with salespeople, right? So the trick around that is um, don't appear as a salesperson. You know, these guys are people that a lot of my staff are people that play in our leagues, they play in our tournaments, stuff like that. They're like in their off hours. And uh, you know, if you approach a customer like with a better question, like, hey, so what kind of games are you into? So you can't answer that with a no. You can't say that saying I'm just looking is kind of an awkward response to that one, you know. But if you engage in conversation with them and get a feel for like what type of games they like to play, or you know, even something as simple as like I mean, you know, I don't like this I don't like like what brings you in today is not a great question just because it's one of those that you can dismiss with I'm just looking or whatnot. But it's a lot better than saying, "Can I help you find anything?" So uh, you know, trying to teach these newer employees to like come out from behind the counter and interact with them, like ask them questions, play a game with them, ask for to show them a demo, put the game in their hand so that it creates a sense of ownership before they've even swiped their card. That's the kind of the stuff that I think that you you don't see that level of professional sales training in most game stores, and that's one thing that we pride ourselves on. So, but going back to your question, it's like they go towards the back. That's where our checkout is. That's where all our magic stuff is. And then one thing that's different from us than other stores that sell cards is we have no glass display cases full of cards like you see in stores. I don't like the aesthetic of it, and I wanted to send a message when we opened um, the upgraded Little Rock location, the one that's 6,000 square feet. I wanted to send a message that I am a hobby gaming store that happens to sell Magic, not a Magic store that happens to sell board games. That makes it. There's a difference between the two. So how do we sell cards? Well, it's entirely kiosk driven. If someone comes in and they want to buy, like, hey, where are your Magic cards? It's a question we often get. Even though there's a big sign on the register, like saying, hey, are you looking to buy singles or buy or sell singles? Talk to one of our associates and we'll get you started or whatnot. Uh, we send them back to we have a row of like 3 computers, and those are kiosk stations, and that's where they can go on and browse our inventory of Magic, Pokemon, um, Lorcana, those type of games. Find singles, and then they place an order. That order gets sent to the back, and my like all of our singles are organized for shipping. Basically, it's kind of a set alphabetical order, um, and my staff will pull the cards and bring them up to the front, and then they check out. So it's a little, and then they can also look through the cards and make sure that because they'll get to, when they're actually browsing the kiosk, they actually get to see the condition, they get to see the price that we're selling it for at that condition, that sort of thing. And then once they're done with the order, they bring it out, and if there's, they can look through the cards and see if there are any discrepancies in terms of, like, maybe difference of opinion with grading or something like that. And uh, assuming they're fine with it, they make the purchase, and then they take their cards and hopefully sit down and play some games here, or they go home and enjoy them at their kitchen table. But yeah, it's a little different than, like, like, we don't do binders, we don't do like boxes of cards that people can browse through. In fact, I think that's one of the things that Wizards frowns upon when they're doing their premium stuff. But we were doing this in 2015 when this was not a thing among game stores, like running completely kiosk driven setup. But we found it worked out really well because one of the problems we had in our first store was that a commander player could type at a register for an hour very easily. Like, they like, here's my list of 100 cards that I want you to pull. Like, ooh, that's gonna take some time, and like, we didn't have the staff that we do now. So uh, it's a little different. I know, like, there are some stores that are very, like, card game centric. They have that, and for them, like, the glass display case is what works for them. I think it's great. I just personally don't. I don't. I think if you're if you're trying to be like a store that caters to all types of gamers, not just just Magic players, not just card gamers or whatnot. The Taking the glass display cases out and the big rows of singles or whatnot sends a message to your community. It says that, you know we're not we're not a card shop, we're not a clubhouse, we're a business that sells games, and we happen to sell Magic and Pokemon and all the other stuff.
This episode of The Match Slip is sponsored by Crash City Con, Roanoke, Virginia's premier gaming and fan convention. It's tabletop gaming at its best, in addition to role-playing games, board games. There are vendors and so much more. Play with some of the top game masters in the area, enjoy a casual game in their open gaming area, or learn to play games you always wanted to play. Attend Crash City Con August 23rd through the 25th of 2024 at the Berglund Center Special Events Center. You could check out more information at crashcitycon.com. I think it's a unique way for sure to go about it. I mean, for the most part, from where I'm from, that's always what I've seen in New York is the exact layout of a game store that you described. So yours is definitely a unique layout, and even just, you know the way you go about inquiring about a customer and what they want, is an outside the box way of thinking, and a very, it's obviously working for you guys, a good marketing tactic in that, right? So, with that being said, what are some of your future plans for the store? I know you had mentioned the opening the third store. Was there anything other than that?
Well, we're trying to get our events kind of back to where they were pre-pandemic. That's been kind of slow going. We had a marketing guy for a while, and that didn't work out too well. And now we're in the process of trying to find a new person to handle that. But it's more about, like, one of the things that I did during the pandemic was I was like, well, at one point we couldn't run events at all, just because of the various lockdown and CDC recommendations, that sort of thing, and then state and local laws or executive orders and things like that. But that hurt us somewhat in terms of events because there were stores. We're in a red state, and that kind of equates to there are certain stores that just thought, oh, this isn't a big deal, like we're not gonna take this seriously or whatnot, and we did. I mean, like we invested in like filtration systems for our HVAC units, like these UV filters that supposed to zap things when they hit the filter or whatnot, and uh, you know we were big on masking and everything else because we wanted. I mean, we didn't want to be responsible for some older person dying from this. And we actually I had one of my employees got a really bad case of it and ended up with long COVID along with his now wife. They He had some major heart issues from the and lung issues from getting COVID or whatnot, and that was so we took it seriously, and that ended up like causing some pain for us because a lot of our customers that also felt that way, that it wasn't a big deal, would go somewhere else. And so it's kind of now that the pandemic's kind of in a like there I think the CDC's even like they're revising their quarantine rule. Like there used to be like I think it was like 10 days at one point, then it went down to 5 days. Now they're saying it's like if you go 24 hours without fever, you can go back to work, resume duties, that sort of thing. So uh, for us, it's more about making sure that we have events that people want to attend and finding like specific days of the week. And so like we're kind of that's one thing we're doing right now is we're kind of in that rebuilding process. Like we have a huge commander community, we have a huge wargaming community, but I want to bring back board gamers. I want to bring back um, like the kids camps that we used to run, that sort of thing over the summer. Um, so getting our events back to pre-pandemic levels is one of my big priorities right now. Expanding our social media reach. I started out on Facebook, and because that's what I knew. I worked for a before I opened or before I started my tech company, and before I opened Game Goblins, I was working for a web marketing firm, and I knew Facebook pretty well, so I was able to build up a Facebook audience pretty rapidly. But I'm 44. I don't TikTok, Snapchat. What are these? Like I just don't work on that often. Like so I bring in young blood, that people that know the new social media and can create content that connects with those audiences is a big part of the transition plan, especially as like I um, try to like not be the bottleneck in a lot of ways as the owner. Uh, that's finding the right person that can facilitate that. I've got a one of the staffer that I'm Mara, the one that I'm trying to train up as a buyer. Mentioned him that she knows how to like run a Discord, and I'm like, great, we've got one. It's not had a lot of love. We need someone to go in and figure out how to moderate it and get people excited about it and visiting it, traffic, that sort of thing. And so she's working on that now. And but yeah, third store is the next thing. Eventually, I want to franchise. My plan is I want to open 5 stores that are company owned, and then I think by that point we'll have our model figured out to where I can package it and sell it to other people, and maybe they can open a Game Goblins in their part of the country or whatnot. And yeah, that's after the second store, I almost said, you know what, I'm done. I don't want to open any more stores. I thought I did. I thought I needed to, it was rough. But I mean, but that's the thing. Like if it were easy, everybody would do it. If it were if there and without adversity, I mean, like there's no reason to grow. Like there's I'd rather be I'd rather have problems that I can solve than be complacent and you know wait for the problems to pop up that I can't fix. uh, big on proactive addressing of problems. And so we learned a lot from the second store. And after I buried my head in the sand and cried for a little while, I came back out and said, you know what, we learned our lessons and we'll do better on store number three, and that's our plan. So um, I've got 2025 is when my lease is up in Little Rock, and I'll either have to renew it or with the current landlord or find a new space. I would love to buy some property. That would be the other cool thing, is if I could find an actual location that's not backbreaking in terms of the price. But that's a problem, is that like you can either be a destination store, like in a community where like the gamers and whatnot know where you are, but otherwise you're you know to the layperson you're in BFE, you're in the cheapest part of town in a giant warehouse or something, and that works for you. And for those type of stores, that's great. My philosophy is I don't want to open a store in a city with less than 50,000 people. I don't want to open a store um, under 4,000 square feet. I don't want to open a store that can't make $1 million a year after 2 years. And I don't want to open a store that you know is hard for people to find. Like I want to be in the populated areas and the more popular shopping areas in a city. Uh, so that kind of limits my options in terms of like where I can expand. But uh, but yeah, I think there's plenty of places to open. I think there's a lot of opportunity. This is our first time we opened a store with competition in the city, so another thing you have to learn and adapt from. But like our next store will probably be in North Little Rock. It's a city adjacent to us. We're also looking at Memphis as a possibility. Uh, I think Northwest Arkansas is probably too saturated. Uh, there's a lot of stores up there, and some of them are really good. Like I said, but yeah, I don't know what the plans are yet for Stormer 3, because we're still working on that. But we know we're gonna get through we're gonna rebuild this year, like our cash pile, and then 2025 we're either gonna be moving, which is gonna be expensive, or we're gonna be renewing our lease, which would be ideal, assuming that we can keep it at around the same rate. Um, and then after that we're gonna work on launching store number three, and then four, and then five, and then you know franchise. The sky's the limit, and I can go move me and my wife to Italy and be done. That's my plan.
That's exciting, though. I'm looking forward to hear how store number three goes, and then once you get to the point of franchising, that'll be very cool. So, as we wrap up here, Josh, it's been a pleasure having you on the show. Where could people find out about Game Goblins if they haven't already checked you guys out online?
Oh, they can go to gamegoblins.com, and we have information for both stores. You can buy singles for you can actually order singles online from both locations for online or in-store pickup, which is kind of nice. We just added that feature. And then for Facebook, you can go to facebook.com/gamegoblins or facebook.com/gamegoblinsconway. And we have all of our social links, I believe, on our website and on Facebook as well. So for the other ones, and then if anybody wants a Discord invite, that's going to be coming up soon. So we'll be posting there once we've try to you know it's kind of weird though. Like we're going to post on Facebook, try to get younger people to come to our Discord. I don't know. We'll figure it out. That's it's kind of it's a good problem to have. But yeah, that's our that's the best place right now, is like gamegoblins.com. Or if someone wants to shoot me an email, they can email me at Josh at gamegoblins.com, and I answer every email that comes to us, especially from customers. So we'd love to hear from people.
Excellent. Well, Josh, thank you again for taking the time and coming on the show and talking about Game Goblins. I've really enjoyed it.
Oh, thanks for having me. I hate public speaking, so this is like you know my medicine against that, I guess.
Well, you did a great job. So I definitely enjoyed hearing all about your store. So thanks again for joining.
All right, thank you. Have a great day.
You too. And for everybody else listening, if you've enjoyed the episode, feel free to check out our reviews at the game stores we visit in person. You could do so at thematchlip.com/newsletter. And with that, we will talk to you in the next episode. Take care.